this is getting juicy. So I kind of got to do a little bit of a follow-up on the video that I did talking about how HBOMax is going to be carrying all of Warner Brothers' 2021 slate. Now, something that I kind of wish I made clearer in the original video was the films aren't going to HBO Max instead of going to theaters. The plan is for them to go to theaters and HBO Max at the same time, to be on HBO Max for a month, after which they'll go off the service, and then the standard, usually about 6-month gap between theatrical run and streaming distribution will be in effect. That is their plan for how they want to do this. Well, as much as I said, I get why they were doing it, especially knowing the kind of pressures that are no doubt on them, both Warner Brothers as a collective entity and HBO Max in particular, from AT&T, which those pressures are getting worse. AT&T just sold Crunchyroll to Sony. What? Again, it just sort of emphasizes the fact that AT&T didn't specifically buy all these individual assets. They bought the collective thing, and now they're looking at the individual pieces and going, we don't want that, we don't want that, we don't want that, we don't want that. That's why they fired so many people at DC. It's why they've sold Crunchyroll. And I do not doubt that this plan to release these things on HBO Max is to try and appease AT&T. But regardless, even if that isn't the case, I said at the time, I think it's a fairly decent business decision overall, given the circumstances that they're in, knowing that HBO Max kind of needs the boost, and knowing that they can't really count on theaters being able to pull anything in the coming year. But they messed up because they didn't tell any of their business partners they were doing this. So, for example, Legendary Pictures, which has a distribution deal with Warner Brothers and is the studio that actually made, say, the new Godzilla and King Kong Skull Island and the upcoming King Kong vs. Godzilla, as well as the upcoming Dune. They did not know that HBO was going to be doing this with their films, and they're pissed. Like, to the point that apparently they were trying to shop around these things to other streaming services. Apparently they were in negotiations with Netflix, is what I've read, but then Warner Brothers shut that entire thing down. So it seems like they are restricting the streaming options as part of the distribution that they're doing with all this. They're cutting out the actual studios that made the films. Because while Warner Brothers does have some things that it makes itself, the DC stuff's a good example, in a lot of instances, it's just the distributor for, films made by other studios. In the case of Legendary Pictures, Legendary picks up a big chunk of those budgets. When you have studios making things that are then going to be distributed by a larger entity like Warner Brothers, it's not uncommon for Warner Brothers to be footing a bigger part of that bill. That's not the case with Legendary. So the fact that they weren't told, they seem to feel really slighted and really, really ticked off about this. And it's not just them. Christopher Nolan, who honestly might, up until this point, have had the best working relationship between an auteur-style director and a major studio, he gets budgets from them that are the kinds of budget that somebody with as unique a approach and concepts as he has, they usually never get to play with that kind of budget. But Warner Brothers lets him do that. They have had a great relationship. Nolan, what he said when he found out that this had happened, and this is personal for him, because remember Tenet, his film from earlier this year, was basically it was kind of the Warner Brothers it was a combination canary in the coal mine. It ended up being kind of a last hurrah for trying to revive the theatrical experience while this pandemic is still going on. And it just did not do very well. It did probably about half of what it would have done otherwise. And the fact that it didn't, and that's looking at the international, and the fact that it didn't do very well, and again, that is not to say that it performed about as well as anything was going to under the circumstances, but the circumstances completely kneecapped it. So the fact that that happened probably had a big part of why Warner Brothers is now doing what it is doing. And Nolan said, we went to bed one night thinking we were making movies with the best studio and woke up to find out that we were making movies for the worst streaming service. He did not mince words. I don't know why this is becoming bizarrely common. I feel like it's becoming a fairly regular thing, especially in regards to these sort of theatrical distribution things, for studios just to announce that they're doing something with no behind the scenes heads up or negotiation with any of the other affected parties, even if the people making the announcements have had good, strong working relationships with them before. I mean, look at what set off when Universal, after Trolls World Tour happened, started saying, you know what? Maybe we'll do this with more of our slate. Maybe we'll have a bunch of stuff just skip theaters. And they just said that. And then this was earlier in the pandemic, of course, before we realized how long this thing was going to drag on. But then theaters were like, oh, no, you do not. So these weird loose lips from major corporations, because it's not like these are things being said by a single celebrity, which is why I tend to think it's not quite like how, actors or directors or whatnot kind of negotiate in the press by getting it leaked that they are in talks for a project, or that they're in talks that they might leave a project or whatnot to give them more bargaining power at the negotiating table in some way. It doesn't feel like that. This just feels like nobody is bothering to go through the checks and balances you should go through before you announce it publicly. These are major, massive companies. And is nobody checking? Hey, did we notify our major business partners who have a controlling interest in some of the biggest franchises we're currently releasing? What? I want to chalk it up to the mad scramble to keep AT&T happy. And while that may be in play, that can't be everything it is. Because like I said, Warner Brothers aren't the only one doing this kind of nonsense. And doing it in this way that sets off this bizarre effect from all these other entities that, shouldn't they have known before that was made public? Oh, wow. So I'm now at a point where I don't think it was a bad overall business decision, especially considering they have to please AT&T for Warner Brothers to do this. But now I will definitely say they've gone about it very stupidly. Oh, man. The filmmaking world is gonna look very different this time next year. I don't know exactly how, but it's not going to be the same. I don't know if it ever will be, for better or for worse. Yeah, I just had to drop a few thoughts about this madness. Had you heard about this? Is this news that I'm giving you? Apparently some people come to me as a news source. I don't know why you do that, but in any case, whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Usual stuff like share, subscribe. I have a Patreon. This is, in fact, what I do for a living. So if you're able to help me out in any amount, it is appreciated. There are perks, but also don't sweat it because there are other ways that you can help me by the usual like, share, subscribe, all of those things. But, even that, don't worry about it. I appreciate it, but, we take a relaxed attitude around here, so just come on back next time you need a break.